Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Love and Lore podcast. Today, I am recording the 10th episode, which is crazy. I can't believe we're already at 10 episodes. So, in this one, I'm going to be talking about my childhood in the Philippines and growing up there and all my memories and experiences and happy times. And yeah, just revisiting that time in my life because even though I only lived there for 6 years and probably only remember 3 of those 6 years, I will forever cherish those memories. I think those 6 years were the best 6 years of my life and the most special. So, yeah, I just want to document this and put it out there and just, I can come back and listen to it whenever I feel nostalgic. I feel like it's such a great gift to have. So, yeah, I want to make this episode super fun and super sweet. And yeah, let's just get into it. So, obviously, I think we all know by now, I was born in the Philippines. I was born on October 9, 2004, and I was born in Pampanga. If you listen to the episode with my dad, he talked about my birth story and basically how when I was born, his dad passed away about a week later. And yeah, it was a very, very crazy time, but that is how I was born. For a bit of background, I lived in this house in Mabalacat, and it was me, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my mima and grandpa. It was our main house, and I say main house because we traveled between three different houses, one in Lubao and one in Betis, and my main one was the Mabalacat house. And I also grew up with two dogs, Chichi and Uno. And my house in Mabalacat, we had a store, we had a restaurant. It was my grandparents' business. And we also had a really big front yard with a mango tree. If you guys listened to the episode with my grandpa, you guys would know that. We had a really nice front yard with so much plants. And yeah, I loved that house so much. And because we traveled so much between the three different areas, I got to see so much family, and I was always around family. And they're awesome. I love them so much. If any of them are listening to this, then you guys all impacted my childhood so much. And I miss you guys so much. I'm so grateful that I grew up surrounded with so much love and so much care, and it really just showed from the very beginning how strong of a bond just Filipino families have. Like, it's just so fun and it's so cute. And yeah, like I said, I only lived there for 6 years, and back then, 6 years felt like such a long time to me, but now that I'm older, I feel like 6 years is really not that long. And just that part of my life was so huge that I can't believe it was only 6 years. In terms of my education, I went to a super, super small school. It was honestly so small, it looked like a house rather than a school at first glance if you were to drive past it. And I remember my uniform was a green skirt with a white top, and we had to wear IDs and we had to wear black shoes. And then we also had, I think it was PE every Friday. Honestly, I don't remember, but for PE days, we had like these pants and then this white shirt, and it was just so awesome. And we could wear any shoes we wanted. So yeah, I remember like every new school year or every couple months or so, my parents would take me to the mall and I could pick out a new pair of black shoes for school. And I always had so much fun picking out new ones. If you went to school in the Philippines, you would know that if you go to the mall, there's always a big section of black shoes because those are like the universal shoes for students in the Philippines. I also remember our backpacks were not your typical on the back backpacks, but those, what do you call it, like luggage bags? Like airport bags, like suitcase bags. And I remember being so obsessed with wanting like a pink one, and I think I did have a Hello Kitty one, but yeah, my like school fit was a white top, a green skirt, black shoes, and then a super fire like Hello Kitty suitcase bag. And I just loved going to school so much. Like I said, it was a super tiny school, and in my prep class, which is basically like the equivalent of grade 1, there were only 5 girls in my class, and if any of them are listening to this, then I hope that you guys are doing so, so good in life. And well, I'm gonna get so emotional, but yeah, I hope you guys are doing so good in life. I know I still follow a few of them on social media, but I genuinely hope that you guys are thriving. And if we ever want to meet up one day in the Philippines, let's do it. Because wow, I'm getting so emotional saying this. What? And then I also want to give a shout out to my teacher, Teacher Bell. If you're listening to this, then thank you so much for being the best teacher ever and for making my education so fun in the Philippines. And I really looked up to you and I wanted to be just like you. And I'm sending you so much love. And I hope that you're doing amazing in life. And I would love to see you again the next time I go back home. And then I also remember from that school, I think it was my sixth birthday. My parents bought Jollibee for my entire class, and we just all had Jollibee in the classroom, and that was so much fun. I remember walking into that room with my purple dress, and then everyone was just chanting Sophie, Sophie, so, and then I was like so embarrassed, and yeah, we just had Jollibee that day, and it was so much fun. And then when I graduated from that school, I was actually valedictorian, which is so funny because I was the only English speaking student, and yeah, I was like, what's a valedictorian? Like, why am I giving a speech? Like, why am I doing this? But that's so cool, and that's such a flex, honestly. Like, period. Yes, Sophie. I remember at the end of that speech, I had to say a line in Tagalog because the rest of my speech was in English because I couldn't speak Tagalog that well. But yeah, I had my final line. It was in Tagalog, and I remember I think I forgot it for a bit, and I remember like practicing that part so much with my parents. It's so funny. But yeah, I had such a fun school experience back home. That last grade prep level was my last ever educational experience back home. So I'm gonna go through just a bunch of my favorite memories. My favorite memories back home would be going to the mall all the time with my family. I don't know, I just loved being in the mall so much and being in air conditioning and browsing through all the stores and going to the toy sections, and everyone would be either like students or people with dogs and people with babies and the restaurants, and it was just so full of life, and seeing all the workers and the karaoke sessions inside of the malls. And yes, I'm talking about SM, Robinsons, Marquee Mall, like the OG malls. They were so much fun. And then of course I had to add, it was not a complete mall trip if I didn't have Jollibee. I would have Jollibee every single time I went to the mall, and I would always order burger steak. Everyone in my family knows that burger steak is my go-to order. I remember this one specific memory. It was raining really, really hard. It always rains so hard in the Philippines, but this one specific day, my brother and I were allowed to go outside, and my mom took this opportunity to have a little photo shoot with us, and we had like a really cute photo shoot in the rain. I remember doing this so vividly, and yeah, I will probably put some photos when I post this, but that was a pretty cute memory. My parents also enrolled my brother and I in this thing called Easy Clarion, and Easy Clarion was basically this talent show like program. I think it was for all ages, but mostly kids. And I did ballet, and my brother did the drums, and then I think I did hip hop as well. And I remember performing in the mall, and it's also on YouTube somewhere. I think I might put a video as well in this post, but I remember performing in my little ballerina outfit and my hip hop outfit, and I had no idea what was going on, but it was fun. I think it was a really nice way to put myself out there as a kid and just have an onstage experience for the first time. And fun fact, when my parents enrolled me into hip hop, I was like, why am I doing hip hop? Like, I want to do art. I don't do hip hop. Like, hip hop's for boys. And I remember doing those hip hop classes and just literally crying because I did not want to dance. And I remember I was with two other boys in my little dance group, and I just did not want to dance. I was like, no, I want to do art. But it's so funny now because I love dancing, and I'm so grateful that my parents put me into hip hop. And like I said earlier, my family and I would always visit the two other houses we lived in, or two other areas, the Lobao area and the Betis area, and visit our families there all the time. And even though the Mabalacat house was our main house, the Lobao house is probably my favorite because it was the only house where the TV actually had channels for me to watch. It had Playhouse Disney, and I loved Playhouse Disney so much. I would watch Handy Manny on there. I would watch Bo on the Go. I would watch Angelina Ballerina. What else? There was Jungle Junction, Imagination Movers, Thomas the Train, and Higglytown Heroes was so good too. And yeah, the Lobau House was the only one that had Playhouse Disney. So yeah, and also it had really good AC. So I remember in the living room, it was so tiny, but in the living room it would be me and the AC, and then watching TV, and then my grandma would be cooking in the kitchen, and I would eat in front of the TV, and it was, oh my god, it was so much fun. So yeah, even if it was the smallest house, it was still my favorite. I went home back in 2023, and just being in that house again, it's so so tiny. I don't know how we lived there all together. There were also so many floods back home because it would rain so much, and every time it flooded, people on the streets would like start swimming. I remember in Betis, it was so flooded, and people were literally swimming, like rafting on the water. And then my dad would go fishing, and yeah, it was a pretty fun time. It was just so normal. We also had so many brownouts. It's called blackouts, but in the Philippines, I don't know why, but we called it brownouts. And I don't know, it was also such a normal thing. Whenever there was a brownout, it would just be me and my family, and we'd always have something to do and just talk and just occupy ourselves. And yeah, I cannot believe we used to live like that. I would also go to the wet market all the time with my mom or my grandpa or my lola, and all the flies would be swarming around everywhere. There would be so many honking and beeping. It was so hot and so humid. There were people everywhere, and I would always go out in my slippers, and it was just such a simple time. And then in the Mabalacat house, we had a family computer in the main bedroom, and I would always play Friv and all these like game websites. I remember playing Haunt the House a lot. I remember playing Dental Adventure, and then like My Dolphin Show or something. And then whenever I would play on the computer, my mom would be behind me. She'd be like either sleeping or on her phone or her like iPod Touch or something. And then also the best part was the AC would be on. And then on that same computer, I would always rewatch the same Barbie movies over and over again. Specifically 12 Dancing Princesses, Princess and the Pauper, and Diamond Castle, Three Musketeers, literally, oh my god, like literally all the Barbie movies. And then also in that house, since we had such a big front yard, I would play in the front yard for hours and hours in the sun, and I would come back inside so sweaty and so dirty. And then sometimes in the middle of the day when my dad would be at work and it would just be my mom, my brother, and I, she would say, "Okay, guys, it's time to close the windows, let's turn on the AC, and then you guys brush your teeth." I think I said this in the first episode, but yeah, like the routine was we close the windows, turn on the AC, close the curtains, and just we would just play in the room, and my mom would be on the computer or something. So much fun. Yeah, it was just a time when we had no phones. It was just toys, my Barbies, and my family. And then it would be better when my dad was at home and we'd all be together. But my dad was rarely home because if you watched his episode, he was always at work. And I'm gonna cry again. But whenever he would come home, the routine was my dad would come home, and then my grandpa or someone would go outside and unlock the gate, and then my dad would come rolling in with his car, his headlights would be on, it'd be dark, and I'd be so happy just standing at the front door and watching his car like come in. And yeah, I'm low-key crying, by the way. And then when we would be staying over at the Lubao house, my dad would come home from work also late at night, and oh, this one hit different because I remember just always running to him and being like, "Dad!" And then he would carry me, and oh my god, I'm getting so emotional. And then another memory was that I was able to participate in like this flower, I don't know, like this parade thing. And basically, you would just be in a carriage in a dress and like a full face of makeup, and you would have your carriage like decorated with flowers, and then someone would be like on the tricycle and kind of wheeling your carriage through the streets. And it was such an extravagant like parade throughout the neighborhood. And I don't know why I was in this, but I think the school was promoting it on the news or something, and then my parents were like, "Let's sign her up" or something, or my grandma was like, "Let's sign her up." And I was in a full face of makeup. I had like a slick back bun. I remember my aunt was doing my makeup in this one bedroom in Lubao, and I was like, "What am I doing? Like, I think this is exclusively for this one school, but I'm just in it." And I felt so weird, and I didn't know anyone, but I just remember strolling through the streets in my little carriage and my makeup, and my brother was like driving my tricycle down the streets, and yeah, that was pretty cool. And then here and there we would have some family trips to the beaches and to so many cool places. And yeah, just overall I had such an amazing childhood. So now I'm going to talk about leaving the Philippines. So I remember my parents told me that we were going to move to Canada, and I was like, "Forever?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh my god, like I get to be on a plane, and I get to finally be in a bathtub, and I can see the snow for the first time." And I was already thinking of like packing my hair ties because who's going to tie my hair. And then my parents were telling me that I was going to live with my cousins and that I have to be prepared because my cousins were boys and the only girl cousin was a baby and I'm not going to have any toys. And then I was like, "Oh, that's okay. Like I'm going to be in Canada, which is the best part. That's so cool." And I was just so excited for this new life, and I didn't even realize how big of a decision that literally was for my parents. I was just so excited to be on a plane and just being in a different country forever. And yeah, I knew that forever meant that we're not going to live in the Philippines anymore, but I was just so excited. I remember we had this thing called a despedida, which is basically when you're about to leave permanently or something, you have this celebration with your family. And I remember having ours, and it didn't really hit me. I was just so excited to go to Canada that I wasn't that emotional. but it must have been very, very sad and very emotional for my parents. So now I'm going to fast forward to the airport and the departure. I will always remember this image. My family and I, we were walking towards like the boarding area, and I remember looking back, and all our family was there to say goodbye to us. I remember looking back and seeing just my entire family just standing there, and it was so vivid. And I'm gonna cry. It was just so vivid. Just that one final look back. I will never forget that. But yeah, I looked back at them and then turned back around and just walked with my family to the boarding area, and that was that. And yeah, in 2011, we officially immigrated to Canada in Vancouver, and the rest was history. So, after 2 to 3 years of living in Canada for the first time, my family and I went back home in 2013, and we also went back in 2016. And then we were also supposed to go back in 2020, but COVID happened, so that was canceled. And then we also went back in 2023. So, yeah, I was able to visit here and there. And I remember just always being so excited to go back home. In my 2013 vacation, I remember that was, the first time I would go back after moving to Canada, and I was so, so excited. We stayed in the Philippines for about 2 months, and it was just so much fun. And seeing our dog Chi Chi and my front yard again, and it was so hot, and I just forgot how the feeling of being back home was. And then seeing my relatives again in Labao and Betis, it just brought back so much memories. And then we went back home in 2016, just before I entered grade 8, I believe. And then the last time I went back was in 2023. My 2023 vacation really hit me the most, obviously because I'm a lot older now, and it just really gave me a whole different perspective on the life back home and how privileged I really am right now. It made me realize how simple my childhood was, and how even though in the Philippines, it's not the most ideal place to live, right? There's pollution, the environment, the politics, the education system. It's all very, not beautiful, but my childhood was awesome. We just made the most out of it, and I had my family, and we were so close, and all the love and the community and the people and the food and the culture. And yeah, I was just so much more emotional in that trip because I really just finally realized how privileged I was that I had such a good childhood there, and that my family was able to even come to Canada for the betterment of our future. Even just showering back at home made me realize how appreciative I am of the clean environment I get to have in Canada. And seeing just people on the streets and taking such different transportation like the jeeps and the tricycles, and the way we do our groceries back at home, it's literally going to the market and paying people up front, and it's always so hot, and it's just so different. I remember we went to the beach during our trip, and there was this guy selling bracelets, and I remember there was like no one on the beach that day. It was typhoon season and nothing was going on, and he approached me and was asking if I wanted a bracelet, and I was like, yeah, I want a bracelet. It was really pretty, and I just wanted to help him. And then my dad was like, no, you can't get that bracelet, bro. Like, and I just got so sad. I started crying and had a big breakdown on the beach. It just made me so sad because just that's how people live in the Philippines. They just sell stuff on the streets, and yeah, I just felt so bad. And yeah, like shopping for food back at home, like my grandma and I, we would, in our trip, it was like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and my grandma took me out to the streets and walked in our neighborhood and our area and just buy breakfast on the street, just like that. And it's so funny because they just like talk like they know each other. My grandma would walk and she would just say hi to every single person on the street. So yeah, we were definitely super close as a neighborhood, and the community was just so beautiful, and that's definitely something I'll always miss. Yeah, I'm just so proud to be Filipino and to have had my childhood there. And I'm so grateful that I got to grow up in such a beautiful environment. And even though it was only 6 years of my life, they will forever be the most special moments of my entire life, and probably the thing that defines me the most as a person. And I want to thank my parents and my family back at home for making my childhood so awesome, and for my teachers and mentors and friends back at home as well. I want to send them so much love. And I know there may be a few of you guys listening that weren't born in Canada and immigrated here as well. And I know that you guys know the feeling of going back home and just being with your culture again and your childhood, and just hits so different. If you're wondering what everything looks like now back home, my house in Mabalacat, it's no longer, how do I say it? Like, no one lives there anymore. Ever since my grandpa passed away, it's just been unoccupied. We cleaned out everything, and it's just a memory from now on. And Chi Chi, my dog, has passed away. Uno, my other dog, has passed away. And then my house in Lubao, It's still there. I think people are living there right now. I'm not too sure. In Betis, everything is still amazing. Family still lives there. It still has so much life. But yeah, I had an awesome childhood and I can't wait to go back. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope you guys got to know a bit more about my childhood and what it was like for me to live in the Philippines and coming to Canada and all the memories. But honestly, though, this episode was mostly for me because I just wanted to have something to listen to and look back on for if I want to, ever revisit my childhood again. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you guys in my next episode.